Is green ready to take back its throne as the top color in the Digimon card game? Let's talk about it. What's up, Tamers? Welcome back to the other decks. My name's Casual Dobo, and today, BT7 is finally here. And to celebrate it, I am going to be talking about the deck that I'm going to be building in real life, in person, that I'm going to bring to all my locals, Green Hybrids. Now, before I get into all the details, I want to know what you are building, so please, down in the comments, let me know what you're building for the new format for BT7, or generally what decks you're excited about. But me personally, I'm excited about Green Hybrids from the Digimon Frontier series. Beetlemon and JP were my favorite characters, mostly because he was a big guy, I'm a big guy. Big guys need more representation in Digimon. We can't keep looking up to Gardramon. But no, in all seriousness, I thought Beetlemon's design was cool. He kind of looked like, a big bad Beetleborg, kind of like a Power Ranger. I mean, he just had cool design, to be honest. And so when I found out that BT7 was going to be all about Frontier and my boy Beetlemon was coming back, I was super stoked. But besides being some of my favorite Digimon, I also think it's just a very good deck to be running. Especially now that, Blue Hybrids got Ice Wall Limited, Yellow Hybrids got Reinforced Memory Boost. I think this has a good shot of taking the top tier, taking the throne, in a meta that's really wide open. And as opposed to some other green decks, Green Hybrid seems a little aggressive. It wants to suspend and wants to swing into things, and that's because JP's Inheritable gives us piercing. So as opposed to sort of the suspension, control-y green decks we've seen in the past, this one could be pretty aggressive, especially in a fast meta that we have, such as BT7. But anyway, that is enough from me. Let's just go ahead and hop right into the deck profile. Alright, and here we are at the deck profile. So, as with all deck profiles we do on this channel, we're going to start off with our Digitama, the Digi-Eggs. And here, we do have 4 copies of Minomon. So this says when attacking, if you attack one of your opponent's Digimon, it gains plus 1000 DP for the turn. So, like I said before, we are being a little bit more aggressive with this deck, and so that means I anticipate that we're going to be attacking a lot more with our hybrids, our level 4s, our level 5s, into some hopefully weak suspended Digimon. And that way we can trigger our Mega Ancient Beetlemon, his once per turn ability that says if a hybrid deletes a Digimon and survives, we can melt one of our opponent's security. So this allows us to gain a little bit more extra DP, that way we can safely swing over things. And then rounding our Digitama, we do have 1 copy of Modimon from the starter deck, and this says when this Digimon's level 6, it gains plus 1000 DP. So both of our Digitama are aimed towards DP gain, but the other Digitama I was kind of considering was Pinamon. This says that when you attack into a Digimon, you get to draw one. And so, honestly, this is one of those like 50-50 splits, so I think you can't go wrong either way by choosing Minomon or Pinamon. Moving on to our rookies, we do have 3 copies of Terriermon. This is a memory blocker, so our opponent can't gain memory except from Tamer effects, which is good because every deck has their memory boost cards. And then not to mention the shenanigans of yellow, blue, purple. This card covers a lot of ground. Very useful. Next up, we have 3 copies of BT7 Betamon. So on play, reveal top 3 of the deck, and then add 1 green level 4, or 1 green Tamer from among them, and then add it to your hand. So this searches for a level 4 or a Tamer, depending on what we need. Ideally, we see our Tamers pretty early, especially our JP, especially our memory Tamers. That way it kind of sets up our plays for later. But if we already have our Tamers out and in play, then this helps us find our level 4s, namely looking for Beetlemon, because he himself is a searcher. And then rounding out the rookies, we do have 4 copies of Pokemon. I think Pokemon is an auto-include in any hybrid focused deck, because on play, you can reveal top 5, and then add a hybrid or 10 warriors in a trait, and a Tamer into your hand. So this kind of does what Betamon does, but gives you both if you happen to find it. Then, once per turn, on your turn, when you digivolve one of your Tamers into a Digimon, gain 2 memory. So this synergizes very well with our first champion of the deck, and we have 4 copies of Beetlemon, So we can digivolve into a tamer as if it was a level 3 Digimon. And because, and you'll see this later, JP has an ability where we can reduce the Digivolution costs by 1 if we're digivolving him into a Digimon. So really, combined with Pokemon, we can actually digivolve into Beetlemon and gain a memory, which is awesome. But like I said, Beetlemon himself is a searcher, so when digivolving, reveal top 5 cards of your deck, and then add 1 card with hybrid in trait and 1 JP, then place the remaining on the bottom of the deck. So there's a lot of building off of these effects, right? So this is kind of like Pokemon, but this time it's specifically looking for JP, so our other green tamers can't get searched by this. But it's getting us another hybrid and getting us JP, which is the key part of this deck strategy. So Beetlemon, incredibly good. Next up, we do have 4 copies of Metal Kabuterimon. So this can digivolve onto a level 4 for 1, can digivolve from a tamer for 2, or can digivolve off a traditional level 3 for 3 memory. But when we do digivolve it, if there is a hybrid or JP in the Digivolution sources, we can suspend one of our opponent's Digimon with 6,000 DP or less. So this is a really good play if you've already established your board, have your Mega out there, have something that has piercing, you can suspend something small and then swing into it with your attacker. Also, if your opponent happens to be running any of those 5k blockers, Metal Kabuterimon takes care of that pretty easily. Digivolve this on top of a Beetlemon for 1, suspend the 5k blocker, and then swing into it with Metal Kabuterimon. But yeah, we have Metal Kabuterimon at 4. And then rounding out my level 4s, I do have 2 copies of Kuwagamon from EX01. This says at the start of your turn, we can suspend one of our opponent's Digimon with 3,000 DP or less, and this synergizes very well with the Izzy and Mimi Tamer, which we'll discuss in a bit. But both of them have start of your turn abilities, so both of them will trigger, but because of the rules, you get to pick which one comes first. I think you can tell where I'm going with that. But yeah, 2 copies of Kuwagamon. This also has an inherent rule that says on your turn, when this Digimon deletes one of your opponent's Digimon in battle and survives, one of your opponent's suspend Digimon doesn't unsuspend until the end of their next unsuspend phase. So this is a really good way to stun in the way that green likes to stun. Alright, and then going into our ultimates, our level 5s, we do have 4 copies of Rhino Kabuterimon. So essentially, if we have a tamer in our Digivolution sources, we can digivolve into Rhino Kabuterimon for 2, which is awesome. And then when attacking, if a card with hybrid or insect in this trait is in this Digimon's Digivolution sources, this Digimon can digivolve into something with Insectoid or 10 warriors in its traits from our hand for a memory cost of 3. So this one is particularly aiming for Ancient Beetlemon, who normally has a Digivolution cost of 5, so we get to reduce it by 2, and we get to swing in, essentially. And we get to essentially swing in with a Mega, 13,000 DP Mega level Digimon, which then, if we are battling a Digimon on our opponent's side, it then procs his own effect. If he has JP underneath of him, he has Piercing. So you can kind of see how having the perfect Digivolution line with the green hybrids is key and very powerful. But yeah, so 4 copies of Rhino Kabuterimon just so that we can cheat our Mega for slightly less memory. And then rounding out our ultimates, we do have 2 copies of EX01 Mega Kabuterimon. So this actually has a little bit of a similar effect to Rhino Kabuterimon, but we have to digivolve for the Digivolution cost. So in this case, it is the full 5, but similarly, we can swing into one of our opponent's Digimon, declare disability, and then digivolve for 5, and then we're attacking with a 13,000 DP Mega. This also has a nice inheritable that says when this Digimon deletes an opponent's Digimon in battle and survives, gain 1 memory. So I've included Mega Kabuterimon from EX01 as a bit of a redundant source of this particular ability, just because our deck operates almost fully on having Ancient Beetlemon out. So we want to cheat him out as quickly as possible. Then going into our Megas, we do have 2 copies of Argomon. This is the BT5 Argomon that says Digisorption -2, so we can suspend up one of our own Digimon to reduce it by 2. So this makes it a 2 Digivolution cost. But the main thing we're looking at here is when Digivolving, suspend all of our opponent's Tamers, and then on all turns, your opponent's Tamers do not unsuspend. So admittingly, this is the anti-hybrid play. But if you wanted to, and side deck alert, yes, we're talking about side decks. We're that competitive here. You can side deck Ancient Troymon into here. Obviously, Ancient Troymon has very good synergy with hybrids in, totality because it is a hybrid. However, I think Ancient Troymon works best against traditional Digivolution builds, right? So potentially against, something like a Gabumon, a Jesmon, Ancient Troymon is a better play for that. So if your locals tends to have a lot of those, I'd say replace Argomon with Ancient Troymon. But if your locals has a bunch of hybrids in it, I think this is the best. Because what you'll find is, even if your opponent has a wide board of Tamers, they're not going to Digivolve all of them at the same time and then swing. Because of the free-flowing nature of the main phase of Digimon, they can Digivolve one of them, swing. If it survives, cool, but if it crashes or goes into an option card that is typically a board wipe, because the other ones are Tamers still, they're not wiped, and then they just Digivolve one at a time and then do little bits of chip damage to avoid those traditional board wipes. And in some way, I count Ancient Troymon a board wipe for green because it's powerful. It can tap down 2 other things, but if there's nothing to tap down, it kind of gets pointless. So that's why I predict in my locals there's going to be a bunch of hybrids, so therefore a bunch of Tamers. So Argomon is the play here, but if we do start doing sideboarding at my locals, I'll probably throw in some Ancient Troymon. But the main mega we're looking for here is 4 copies of Ancient Beetlemon. So on our turn, once per turn, when one of our Digimon with 10 warriors or hybrid in its traits deletes an opponent's Digimon in battle and survives, trash the top card of our opponent's security stack. So yes, this is a once per turn ability, but it means that any of our hybrid Digimon, our Beetlemon, our Metal Kabuterimon, can swing into something, fairly small, and we can still remove a security from this effect. It also applies to itself. So, if you attack a Rhino Kabuterimon into something else, and JP is in sources, you can pierce, melt the security, and then activate piercing to then do that security check that you would have had. So there is a strong possibility that you could get a turn 2 Ancient Beetlemon that destroys 2 security checks. And that's the type of aggression that I think green was missing. Because if you find all the pieces, if you have the perfect hand, this can be pretty aggressive pretty fast. And then the other ability Ancient Beetlemon has is on deletion, you can play a green level 4 or lower Digimon with hybrid and straight from your hand without paying memory costs. And then rounding our Digimon, we do have 2 copies of Susanomon. This is just an overall very good card. Yes, I know you can't do, that Mega Digimon Fusion play anymore because that's been banned. But even at 7, and we're not doing any win rate 60% here, but I still think that even at 7 costs, Susanomon is pretty solid, especially as a late game aggressor. So its first ability says that if we return 10 hybrid and tamer cards from our trash to our deck, we can Digivolve on top of a tamer as if it was a level 6 Digimon, and then Digivolve for 7. But when Digivolving, you get to delete one of your opponent's Digimon. Just blanket any one of your opponent's Digimon. And then inherently it does have security attack +2. But yeah, this is a very good card to have. Probably unless you're playing a option heavy deck that probably has, something like Iron Fisted Onslaught, Digivolve, what's that one? Ultimate Flare. Just anything while it's vulnerable. Sorry, it's getting late here. But even for its high memory cost and kind of susceptible nature to some of the high-powered option cards out there, Susanomon is a very good attacker, very strong, and it's something that your opponent is going to have to deal with, otherwise they're probably going to lose the match. So we do have 2 copies of Susanomon. Going into our options, we have 1 copy of Hidden Potential Discovered, just because it's an auto-include, and technically we can use this to Digivolve into a Susanomon for 2, because it says next time one of our green Digimon Digivolves, our Ancient Beetlemon, our Argomon, we can suspend one of our Digimon, our other Digimon, to to reduce the memory cost by 5. Next up, we do have 2 copies of Thunder Laser that says if we have a Digimon with Hybrid or 10 warriors in its trait, suspend one of our opponent's Digimon. So this is just a slightly more efficient flower cannon or needle spray because it's for a memory cost of 1, and just very good for the hybrid deck because it needs hybrids. So yeah, since we're playing hybrids, let's take advantage of that and have a 1 cost suspending option. And then lastly, for our options, we do have 3 copies of Dino Memory Boost. So for 3, we can suspend one of our opponent's Digimon, and then later on in the next turn, or whenever we want to use it, we have delay and gain 2 memory. Next up, we do have 3 copies of Mimi Tachikawa. This is our memory tamer, and does have the main ability that if we have a level 5 or higher Digimon, we can tap it to either hatch a Digi-Egg into an empty spot, or if we already have something Digivolved onto it, we can pull it out. That said, the more I think about it, the more I'm tempted to run 3 copies of Ken instead, who is still a memory tamer, but says when one of our green or blue Digimon deletes successfully one of our opponent's Digimon, we can tap it to gain 1 memory. Yeah, and like I said, I'm kind of 50-50 on it, almost like 60-40 Ken, but Mimi does have some good utility, even though there's not a whole lot of rookies for us to Digivolve into. It could be a nice surprise attack, because if you didn't know, if you hatch on the turn, Digivolve something, and then, you know, tap Mimi to bring it out, it can attack. But yeah, Mimi could be an interesting surprise hit, potentially, that your opponent wasn't expecting, but I'm leaning Ken, to be honest. Next up, we do have 3 copies of Izzy and Mimi. So, start of a turn, if our opponent has suspended Digimon, we gain 2 memory, and this is sort of where I was talking about the Kuwagamon play, right? So both of them have start of your turn abilities, which means at the start of your turn, both of them trigger, but because of how Digimon works, you can choose which one activates first. So you can activate the Kuwagamon, suspend one of your opponent's Digimon, and then activate the Izzy and Mimi, and you gain the 2 memory. So even if they did nothing, if they just, you know, kept everything on their board unsuspended, and was just playing it safe, you can force their hand a little bit. So a little bit of a mini tech. And then on our turn, when one of our level 5 Digimon attacks, we can suspend this to reveal top 3, and then Digivolve into 1 green level 6 Digimon from among them onto the attacking Digimon without paying the memory cost. Now, this is a bit of a gamble, and not exactly a calculated gamble like in the Gotcha Green deck profile that I did a couple weeks ago. This is straight up a gamble, and we haven't really included anything that can let us, you know, scry, say if we use the Koromons, or check the top of our deck. So I would recommend not using that main ability, but if you want to take a shot, especially since you can Digivolve into an Ancient Beetlemon potentially for free, if you want to take that shot, go ahead and do it. And then last but certainly not least, we do have 4 copies of JP Shibayama. So has the security effect that you can play this card without paying its memory cost. And then on our turn, when this Digimon Digivolves into a green Digimon, reduce the memory cost by 1. And then as an inheritable, our Digimon does gain piercing. And yeah, that is the deck profile, BT7 Green Hybrids. What do you think? What do you think about this new aggressive style that Green has in the BT7 meta? Let me know down in the comments below. And while you're down there, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel. That way you'll be notified when the next deck profile comes out, now that we've kind of gone through all of the, you know, traditional hybrid decks for BT7. I think it's time that we finally get a little weird, and maybe I'll bring back the set tradition of making a green-black deck. We'll see what happens. I've made a couple in the past. None of them work out as well as I thought, but they sure are fun to see in action. So I think that could be a really fun thing. There's also an Ancient Greymon deck that I want to showcase to you. Based on a conversation I had in one of my previous videos in the comment section. So yeah, if you comment down there, I am pretty active and kind of respond to everything that comes through, so would love to hear from you. But yeah, I think that'll do it for me. It's getting late over here. I think it's clearly showing in my voice. So thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. And Tamers, play what you like, build what you love, and I'll catch you in the next video. Have a good one.